Let's talk all about AI in business. It's hosted by Brent Muller. Welcome to the Future Proof Podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the latest episode of Future Proof, the podcast where we're decoding how founders, leaders, and execs are changing the business landscape using AI, data, and automation. So if you're looking to future-proof your business, you're definitely in the right place. And before we jump into today's episode, as we always say, here at Deploy AI, our sister company, we're here to help people understand where to implement and where to start with AI, especially on the go-to-market side. If you want to have a 15 or 30-minute conversation, there's links in the show notes. No pitch. We're here to help, and we just want to steer people in the right direction. But let's jump into today's episode. I'm joined today by Deryck Jones from Eglut Digital. Deryck, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure. Happy to be here.
Awesome. And just as we always do, let's jump right in and talk to you about what I call the leader's journey, which is basically your background. Deryck, tell everybody kind of your navigating the waters of all your different career jumps.
Wow, I've had a long journey. I've been in the market for 56 years.
So you started at one.
When I was 7 years old. My parents went out to dinner one night, and I took our TV completely apart. And I hear the front door opening. It's my mom and dad coming through the door, and I'm sitting in the middle of the floor with parts of the TV all around me, and I thought I was a dead man. And my dad, who was a former commander in the Navy, just walked by me and tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Johnny Carson's on at 11:30," and they went upstairs. And so I knew it was the hint, man, get the TV back together, right? So somehow I did, and somehow he was able to watch Johnny Carson. So it saved my skin that night, but that launched my career. Quite frankly, I mean, I was completely immersed in tech from that point forward. I spent 6 years in the Marines, got introduced to computers and doing key punch cards back then. And when I got out of the service and finished my degree, I started off as an entrepreneur. And so I was in Southern California, and back then the construction industry was beginning to boom. And so I ended up developing a piece of software to do something called haul path analysis, because one of the biggest expenses in heavy construction is the movement of dirt. I would look at all their heavy equipment, the characteristics of that equipment, their haul routes, and I'd generate a report saying, okay, here's the right mix of equipment, here are the haul routes you want to take, and this will save you X amount of money if you do it in this order. Right. It was a big hit. Led to my first mentor, who's a guy that had developed a complete civil engineering suite on a mainframe that was being used by Bechtel and Floor Daniel at the time. And so he and I agreed to port his Earthworks package out to a PC. And this was just as PCs were emerging in the market in the mid-'80s. Yeah. So we sold that as Civil Image Systems up and down the West Coast, and everything from the Fresno Dam down to extensions on the John Wayne Airport, the Three Gorges Dam in China, a bunch of things got built using our software. And then that led to my corporate stint, which I was recruited by Spectra Physics Laser Plane at the time. They were the gorilla in the construction instrument space, and they were a manufacturer who knew they needed to become a software company. So they basically hired me to help drag them into the modern age and develop some computer systems and keep from building all these different control boxes down to one control box differentiated through software, which led in the 90s to my leading an international team that built the world's first fully autonomous robotic machine control system for heavy construction, and my introduction to machine learning. Yeah. And so then in the very early 2000s, in fact, literally at the turn of the century, I got hired by a British-based PR firm that was heavy in the tech space to solve they kept reinventing the wheel every time they'd spin out a new brand. And one of the biggest brands was Text 100 International in San Francisco. So I was headquartered there. And for the next couple of years, I literally went around the world like 4 times, visited 55. The whole job was basically to convince their entire management team that my pathway for their tech stack was the right way, which led to my being named by Computer World back then, 2002, as one of the top 100 CIOs in the country at the time.
Wow. That's prestigious.
I was right alongside of the CTO from Federal Express and the head of Delta Technologies. So it was a pretty sweet spot to be in.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And then, 9/11 happened. When 9/11 happened, the budget dried up, and I went back to being an entrepreneur, and I've been one ever since. This is my 7th company now. I actually built a managed IT services company up in Boston that I grew to $4.5 million in 3 years, and then it got a buyout at $11.2 million in 2011. that unfortunately went south. Otherwise, I'd be retired sitting on a beach somewhere drinking tiki drinks. But instead, what happened was the Greek finance minister came out and declared they were going to default on their loans to the EU. And when they did, the guy that was going to buy me was literally putting together a $1 billion deal in the smart city space. And his plan was to buy 25 different companies and everything from dark fiber to cloud-based assets and so on and get a quick start into the market. And so when that guy did that, all the investors pulled back. They were all European, so they pulled back. He comes to us and says, look, hang in there. I'm going to get another investor. About a month later, he brings us all to Florida. We have this big gala and we meet the new investor and everything's looking roses. And then about a month later, Mark flies out to Vegas to sign the papers, and he's greeted by the FBI as he gets off the plane. And it turns out that his investor was part of a group that had been skimming off the boats, gambling boats down in the Mississippi Delta region for years. Wow. And so they're now sitting in federal prison. Unfortunately, the deal went south. I lost the company and about $1.5 million personally and had to start all over again. So then I started a software company. It was a Salesforce partner, development and integration partner. Did that for a couple of years, but I ended up seriously irritating the senior VP of sales at Salesforce because I made a deal with one of their top enterprise sales guys to funnel me leads, and I'd pay him 18% under the table to do it. So I was closing all these deals: Sony Music, Canon Professional, Genesis Telecommunications, and the list goes on. And it turns out they weren't real happy because they wanted those deals going to Accenture and Deloitte. Basically,
they're preferred. Their preferred list. And
unfortunately,
I know how that game goes.
Bob got fired, and I basically got a legal notice saying that Dataforce was in conflict with Salesforce. Yeah. So I kind of took the hint and closed down the company and went on to the next thing. So, which eventually led me to where I'm at today.
Awesome. Well, hey, look, it is a absolute rarity, Deryck, that I have someone on the podcast that their founder's journey is like this smooth thing. It just doesn't happen.
Never happens.
It's all over the map, right? It's like the roller coaster, and it's what makes you who you are today. Yeah. So let's fast forward and talk to us about Eglut Digital, sure. and then you also have another company with this Link Genius. So talk to the audience about kind of what you guys do.
Well, it's all under one company, but basically what we do is we actually serve both ends of the market. So for the small business market, what we do is, we identified two critical points that they all struggle with. One is leads and the other is their tech stack. And so for the leads, what we do is we have developed a LinkedIn campaign automation platform that is fully built in on Go High Level. And so what they are able to do is to essentially go into LinkedIn, build a campaign on Link Genius, use that to get people to pop up their heads, show that they're interested. And if they are, we slingshot the data directly into Go High Level CRM through a webhook. And then they take over the communication. And as soon as they do that, it stops the automation so that they're only getting one stream of communication at any one time. The ones that end up in Go High Level, we then put it into an automation where they're getting an ongoing nurturing campaign to help solidify appointments. And then we use an AI appointment setter to close that part up. But then we have what we call our Helping Hand program, which is really focused on their tech and helping them either rebuild their tech stack, make changes to it, whatever's required in order to get them essentially optimized on the tech stack. On the high end of the market, however, we've got a very high-end, high-touch AI training program we call AI Ambassador. It is sold directly to the enterprise. The enterprise then decides however many seats they want for the number of MVPs they want to train within their organization on AI. We do train in AI, but we really focus on process and strategy because in my experience, most of the organizations to date that have really gotten into AI in a big way, most of them have not achieved ROI. And I think most of the reason that they haven't achieved ROI is because they haven't been doing it correctly. And the biggest issue is their data. So we really focus on the process and strategy through this training program. And then towards the end of the program, we have the MVPs come back and give a capstone presentation back to their organization on their own internal AI initiatives. And in that process, we've handpicked 2 or 3 that can be potential champions for our services. And then we have roughly 2,000 developers in everything from computer vision, machine learning, agentic AI, and so forth that are capable of delivering on virtually any project. So that's what we do.
Excellent. As we always do, the first thing I say is, so you're playing in a couple different spaces and across a bunch of industries there. So Deryck, talk to us about what you're seeing on the ground, and the changes in the industry over the last, year or two, couple of years, right? And why you kind of went this direction. And then we'll get into the technology.
Yeah, so I work through a lot of partners is how I operate. I work like classically as a fractional CTO, and I work through a number of partners, and they help identify those organizations that are either interested in getting into it or have already gotten into it and simply didn't achieve ROI in the process and are frustrated. What I've seen over the last couple of years is I've seen kind of a rush to get into AI out of fears that if they don't get into AI, that they're going to get somehow left behind. We're in very early stages still, although things are moving extraordinarily fast. We're still in early stages. And as I mentioned earlier, the biggest issue I see is it's the classic garbage in, you get garbage out. And most organizations, their data have big problems. And whether it's, built-in biases that are in the data or just kind of the more kind of traditional problems in their data sets, from duplicates to you name it, these all run into serious problems when you're trying to do something with AI. So the very first thing that has to be addressed is the data. And that's the big problem.
You mean almost like a cleanup and cleansing process to get it ready for AI?
Correct. I mean, I'll give an example. We've got a client that we're working with right now that most of their orders are entered through email, even though they have an ERP and they've got a CRM. This is a couple $100 million company, but most of the orders come in through, they've got two sales teams. They got an external team that basically is customer facing. They got an internal team that really handles the orders, right? So what happens is the external team will email that information into the internal team, and they're supposed to immediately input it into the CRM. But by the CEO's own words, he thinks that at least 80% of the orders, or I should say 20% of the orders, don't make it. He doesn't know what the exact number is. Mm-hmm. So what we're doing is we're developing an AI agent that basically will take in all of his email and essentially sort that email, pull out those orders, identify them, and get them properly, posted in his ERP and CRM so that he has clear visibility to every order he gets.
Love that. Love that. And these are the kind of use cases, Deryck, that we call out all the time in the podcast of ROI, not always meant to be, it's not always directly tied to revenue. In this case, it is, right? But what we tell everybody is the impact, whether it's effort or revenue, right? They need to be evaluated before undertaking a solution for it, right? And I think to your point, this is where I think a lot of companies get it wrong, and they just throw people at it, and it's very disjointed, and there's no alignment of strategy. And I did a similar deal with a client, and this was before they really weren't embracing AI. And also, this was just, hey, can we do some automation, right? We had a client about a year and a half ago, and they threw basically offshore bodies at it, right? Okay. And they attacked a list of about 12 different things that they thought were broken in this process, right? This implementation process they had. And instead of evaluating up front, like, hey, here's the effort it's going to take to fix that, and then here's the impact, right? They went ahead and did it. And one of their biggest efforts, it took them, I think they put 1,600 hours of effort in from this team. And it saved them like less than 15 minutes on the overall process. And you're like, how could you possibly have allowed that to happen? Right. And right, you've been in companies long enough. That happens all the time.
It does. And it's painful to watch.
It's painful to see.
Hear. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is with AI, I'm of the mindset that things are moving so quickly that if you don't have alignment from the top all the way down the line through the entire organization on what it is that you're doing, how you're going to go about it, you're going to fail. I mean, you're just not going to get the ROI that you expect. Everybody 100%. Has got to be in alignment.
100%. I couldn't agree more. All right. So Deryck, that leaves us into the obvious next, topic of, how do you envision AI now making the impact, and where do you see that happening over the next, let's call it 18 months? To your point, we're early stages, but it's moving rapidly fast.
Yeah. It's One of the big problems I also see is that, people are trying to get that big hit, right? And so they're looking at what their biggest problems are and, how can I, knock this off the shelf and just get it behind me. But with AI, you can't start that way. You've got to identify some core key problems within your organization. Start small, because it's going to take time to actually get alignment in your organization, get everybody lined up, understanding exactly what it is you're going to do and exactly how you're going to go about doing it. And it's a complete mindset change. And so if you try to hit that home run right out of the gate, you're going to fail. The way we try to approach is to look at smaller key projects that we can start with to help move the organization in the right direction from the very start. And then, gradually build up from there. So as they start to, book some real wins and start to get some serious ROI on the things that we do, like that email project, the easier it's going to come for the organization.
Yeah. Another thing, and I want to get your take on this, especially being, former CTO and a fractional CTO now, is one, we always say in here, AI is the one thing about AI that it is different than a lot of the things that we've undertaken, like mobile and cloud, right? Is that AI is not limited to IT anymore, right?
No.
And
Right.
a lot of the board level and C-suite still, IT will just handle that, right? Well, that's the wrong answer. But the one thing that I do think, right, that CTOs can help the rest of the organization understand is how to share the memory and the resources so they can all access and build their AI on top of, right?
Mhm.
How do you coach your clients in that regard? Because I call it the AI brain, right? Where there are resources that everyone can pull from, right? That that all of the AI agents and things that you're building on top and solutions can pull from the same thing rather than reinvent the wheel. But right now I see it very siloed. How do you see it? How do you coach them?
Yeah. So, we typically go after the data first. So trying to solve any and all data issues that we can find with their data structures,
Yep.
and then kind of build a common data lake, if you will, that they can then build off of and build from.
Yep.
Again, we start typically small, and we try to get everybody in alignment from the very beginning. As an example, I've got a project right now that, in the scope of things, it's actually a pretty big project, but there's a lot of much smaller steps that it can be broken down into.
Right.
And so we do it in a very phased approach, one step at a time. And if you can get people aligned for these, real simple example, every client I work with, I teach them, for example, how to build their own GPT. And I don't care if it's a CEO in an enterprise organization or if it's a mom and pop shop. They're going to get a much better throughput if they build their own GPT, upload all their data into that, so that when they're asking questions of the GPT or of Chat GPT or Claude or whatever they're using, it's actually relying on their data sets, not just the data pool. And when they see the outcome and they see what, how big of a difference it makes, then suddenly it becomes easier for them to start to apply that to bigger and bigger models. But I think so many of them can't even picture it until you actually put it in their hands and show them what how the results can differ.
Yeah. What is, I forget, is it Buckminster Fuller's law of, yeah, when you give them a tool to play with, right? It just, their mind expands. Someone else told me, picture's worth 1,000 words, right? But a demo or a tool is worth 1,000 pictures. And I think that is what's missing. I think you're right.
Yeah.
Build them a GPT, let them experience it, and they go, now I know what I'm missing, right? When
Right.
you're not using it every day, you don't know what you're missing. Like,
Correct.
I use my GPT every single day. I can't imagine life without it, right?
Yeah.
But I think the people that aren't, they don't know how much easier it can make their life.
Yeah. It's usually one of the first things I do with every single client. If you go into my, instance of ChatGPT, I've got shared with me every GPT that every one of my clients builds. So when I'm doing work for them, I'm using their GPT.
Yeah. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a
No,
simple, it's a really simple thing to do. It's not hard. It doesn't take a long time. They can actually conceptualize it, and the steps are simple. So I just sent an email out this morning with another one to another new client. It's the same process I do every single time, and it works.
yeah, that's fantastic. That is fantastic. I think you're going to have to start giving away a little bit of a playbook, and so people come and start talking to you
I
because
actually just did that. I actually developed this morning. Let me see if I can find it real quick. What it was what I ended up calling it. But basically, it's a let me see it real quick here. It is my AI, because I did a post on LinkedIn last week or the week before. It's called the AI Quick Start Playbook.
yeah,
For growth focused marketers is what I called it.
perfect.
But it just gives people a starting point, right? Something that they can actually do themselves and actually see some immediate results that's got, going to make a real difference in terms of what they do and how they do it.
Yeah, yeah. And then when you can start to work with someone that has expertise like yourself, and when we do the same thing, is that we show them that's like, first grade level,
Yeah.
right? And it's extremely, extremely powerful, right?
Yeah.
And then when I show them some of the things that we do,
Mm-hmm.
right, and show them like where they can, so they can at least think in their head, I'm here, I can get to here, right?
Yep.
And I'm sure you do the same thing. And I think that really helps people. And we don't have enough people out there showing our execs and our leaders about one, how easy it is to make an impact and to build something as simple as a GPT, which I love that you do that. And then two is that, to your point about experiencing it, when they start to see, wow, look at the output that I can get from that, what else can it do? And then obviously that's hopefully leads them down the path of doing this. So, but circling back to what you guys do at Eglut. So tell me as you look down the road the next 18 months, what do you think? Like, where are your biggest opportunities? Is it working with enterprise clients? Is it working with the mid-market in certain industries? Because is it showing them how to do something simple
I
like
think
GPTs?
the biggest impact is going to be in the mid-market, quite frankly, because there's, trying to
Why I
move
had you
the
on today.
enterprise. Yeah, exactly. I mean, because trying to move the enterprise is like trying to move a massive 100-ton boulder, right? I mean, just they're fixed and they move slowly, they think slowly, they act slowly. But you get
Mhm.
some of these mid-market companies that are lean and quick on their feet. They can take some pretty quick action, and it's easier for them to get people in alignment to move forward in a specific direction. So I really
Yep.
think it's going to be the upper end of the SMB market into the true mid-market.
Yep. And exactly why we focus the podcast on that market, because I believe exactly what you just said is a truism. And, and I think I was telling you before, I have a few friends that were, C-suite execs that have moved down to the mid-market for that reason. They see the opportunity to make an impact and to, navigate and steer the ship faster. So
Sure.
Deryck, last question I always ask this is, if you had a magic wand and you could do one thing with it with AI, right, to help you go where you want to go with Eglut, right? Because you have a lot of things you can help with. You across a lot of industries, SMB all the way up through the enterprise. What would you use AI right now to do and to move the needle to get you where you want to go in the next 18 months?
It's actually one of the simplest things. It's just about booking orders and kind of closing the sales process. And I'll give a really simple story. I was on a webinar with a fairly large group of people, and somebody, they introduced me into the group, telling that the person that was hosting the webinar basically introduced me as somebody that was helping him with his AI stuff. And so somebody privately messages me. Well, I had been experimenting with AI in Go High Level, and I'm sitting there and I see his text come through, and I had left the AI on. So the AI picked up and started communicating with the guy, and they're having this ongoing conversation, and I'm sitting back just watching the whole thing. And the AI takes him all the way to the point, books the appointment, and at the end, the guy says "Semper Fi," which tells me he realized I was a former Marine, and the AI responds back "Semper Fi," and I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And
Yes.
but it just goes to show. I mean, it's a simple process that a lot of people get hung up on because they have trouble, closing deals, that you can really have a strong impact, particularly on smaller companies. You can have a tremendous impact by doing some of this stuff. So that would probably be my first point.
Well, I love it. I love it. Well, listen, Deryck, I thank you you and I are very simpatico here. I love what you're doing. I'm sure we're going to do some stuff together.
Sounds great.
We absolutely love folks like you to come on and share their expertise and start to help push people off the fence and into motion, because AI is moving very fast, right? We are early stages, but you can't afford to wait.
Yeah, it's not going to wait. And if you don't get on board and you don't get it right, you're going to be in the wrong line.
Yeah, 100%. Well, thank you for spending time with us today. Thank you for sharing your insights. This is exactly the kind of guest that we bring all the time onto Future Proof, because we want you to get all the knowledge that you can through the podcast and through our sister podcast. We're not the only one. We're here to be a resource and to help you make better, smarter, faster decisions about AI, data, and automation. And Deryck hit it right on the nose. The number one thing you need to fix in your business is the data first. As many of my guests say, I'm data rich and insight poor. If you fix your data, your insights allow you to make data-driven decisions and build AI solutions on top. So if you do nothing more, Deryck, tell them how to get in touch with you guys at Eglut. There'll be links in the show notes.
Sure. You can call 571-200-4423, or you can email me directly at Deryck@eglutdigitalmarketing.com. Yeah. Feel free to text or reach out to me. In fact, you can reach me also on my cell at 339-234-1656, and happy to help in any way I can.
Absolutely. Love it. Thank you so much for being open, and I just love that about you. So thank you. And guys, that wraps up this episode of Future Proof. And again, we can't wait to see you on tomorrow's episode, but Deryck is definitely the type of guest that we love to have on here. And so, if you're looking for fractional CTO help, if you're looking for some of the solutions he talked about, definitely get in touch with Deryck. So thanks, guys, and we'll see you on tomorrow's episode.
Super. Thank you.
If you're ready to embrace change and lead with innovation, be sure to subscribe and never miss an episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Future Proof Podcast.